Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk to you about how to paint the grass and foliage in my recent mule deer painting. So this scene is taking place in the North Dakota Badlands where there is a lot of sagebrush, a lot of grass, a lot of different species of grass, and a few forbs and things like that as well. So let me take you to the beginning where I've got sort of a blank canvas underneath the deer and I'm starting to build up the foundation of all of these different things going on. Now the first thing that I'm doing here is I've taken a 1/4 inch filbert brush and I've mixed sort of a dull brownish color, and I'm just trying to figure out where I want my shadows to be. And you'll see me switch to a darker color, and I'll just try to build up some different varieties of shadows, some different levels of shadows. And I'm really not worried about detail at all, as you can see. I'm just sort of blotching on the areas where I know there's going to be shadows existing, where I know those dark areas are going to be. So basically, I'm just trying to build up a lot of random texture. When we look at grass and foliage and things like that, bushes, there's a lot of randomness. So I just want to darken down the foreground, and I want to start building up those random textures of dark, and as well as some midtones as well. You'll see me switch to sort of a burnt sienna color, and I just want to darken some of that and just continue to build up some blotchy texture. Now you've seen me switch back to a little bit of a lighter color, and I'm going over the top of what I laid down and just adding some indications of grass over the top of those dark areas. So I'm just beginning that process. You can see I'm also just lowering the foreground down a bit from the background, so I'm adding some blue. I just didn't like the shape of the hillside in front here, so I've just lowered that down, mixing some of the blue I had behind. I'm continuing with that random texture again. Now I've switched to a round brush so I can create some finer lines, and they're really going on very random, just some random lines, just to give me that sense of grass and shadows of grass. Just want to, again, just keep it random. Then you can see me switch to a darker color here, and I'm beginning to think about the ground. So I'm adding this texture more of into a horizontal pattern, and that's going to give me the feeling of perhaps some dirt on the ground in between the grass, things like that. So I'm going to build up some of that ground color, really, really dark color. And I'm even going to use it to shape some bushes too. So we want some dark shadows, maybe some clumps of grass. So you'll see me kind of brush that up in a few areas vertically, just to kind of start to form some bushes as well. Now when I move to the sagebrush, I'm basically going to take that same color, and I'm using my round brush and just swirling on little bits of texture. So I want there to appear to be some branches, and although I don't need to make each branch perfect, I do want to make sure that the pattern resembles those branches. So I'm moving quickly, but I'm also making sure that I don't lose control of what I'm trying to depict. Now that I've got some branches laid down for each sage bush, I'm going to begin to add some foliage over the top. And so, of course, sagebrush has those blue, silver-like leaves, and I've just mixed that color with a small round brush, and I'm just pixelating it on. And then underneath, after I've got an initial layer of leaves over the top, I'll start to add some highlights to those branches. So this is just a lighter brown color, and I'm just stroking on a few indications of some lighter branches just to give you a little bit of detail. And again, I'll move back to the flowers and just continue to add all these little bits of leaves and flowers. And there's really no way to get around doing this. It just takes a lot of patience. There's no way to speed it up. So you'll see me just pixelate over and over and over and over again. And this is actually quite a long process to get all of those leaves pixelated on there. But if you spend the extra time instead of scrubbing over it quickly, it really adds a lot of realism. That small pixelation just adds a whole lot to the viewer when you're first looking at it. And so you can see that the top of my sagebrush has a few highlights, so I've just mixed some more white in that and just added a few highlights on the top part of the sagebrush just to give the bush itself a little more depth. Now I'm beginning to move to the grasses themselves. So I've got the shadows laid down, and I've just mixed sort of a medium tone color, maybe some raw sienna and some white. And I'm just starting to take that round brush and just wherever I think that I might want some blades of grass, I'm not worried about anything other than just getting those blades of grass down. So they're just simple lines mixed with this color. And I try to switch up the angle of my brush, the way that I move my brush across the canvas, just to give it some variety. And now you're seeing me move to a few of the rock details. So I'm just adding some pebbles on the ground, just some imperfections into the dirt. And now you can start to see things make sense. You can imagine that this is a dirt ground with some rocks and some pebbles, a few pieces of grass, some smaller grass. And so that starts to build the foundation up. But before I get too far in that, now I'll switch back to what's behind the deer and start working my way forward. And I'm beginning with these blades of grass. So I'm just using this round brush. Again, I think this is raw sienna and some white. So I'm just very lightly stroking the canvas with this brush just to give a small thin line, and repeat it over and over and over again. It starts to make up what we appear as grass. So again, this is just one of those things. There's really no shortcut to getting a quality result. You have to individually paint each blade of grass if you want a lot of realism to show in your work. And so I'll just go over and over and over, back and forth again, just continuing to add these blades of grass with this color. And if I want to darken some of them down, I could glaze a color over the top and that would darken them a bit. But I'm not so much worried about that right now. I just want to build up a lot of texture that makes it appear as grass. So you can see I'm adding a few darker lines as well. So I have switched to a darker color. So I'm not only painting on grass with the lighter color, but I'm using the darker color as well. And that starts to add some depth. You can see it just breaks up the grass a bit underneath the deer. So now you can see that I've wanted to add another couple sagebrushes down in the foreground. So I'm just repeating the process to build up that bush, adding the dark shadows first with the branches, and then I'll add the flowers over the top like I did with the other ones. Okay, so up until this point, it's been acrylics, and now I'm switching to oil paint. So this is a bit fast forwarded into the painting when I'm ready for oils. I've just completed wrapping up the sagebrush down low in the foreground and really haven't done anything else to the foreground. So the reason I'm switching to oils is because I can get a lot thinner lines with the oil paint, but more so the oil paint covers a lot better than the acrylics. So I can get a lot brighter blades of grass. I can get brighter highlights. I can usually get more saturated color. So this is the reason why I like to finish with oil paints. And so you can see the only thing that I'm doing is just painting on these blades of grass using this, again, same color with some white and some raw sienna. And I'm just painting on these blades of grass with that color. But what this is doing for me is allowing me to add brighter blades of grass and just a lot thinner, so they're more defined, and just that small amount of extra detail adds a whole lot to the painting. So you can see these going over the deer. All of a sudden the deer is starting to become more enhanced. It's just more pleasing to have some of this grass pop up in front of the deer as well. And it's just a lot easier for me to do with oils versus acrylic, which is why I do use oils at the end here. But for the most part, the foreground is completed. I just feel that adding these few extra details, these thinner blades of grass, and they're much more vibrant, is just going to add a whole lot to the painting and the piece itself. I'm also adding a few highlights to the sagebrush as well, because again, like I said, I can't get quite the brightness out of the acrylic, so I'll use the oil just to brighten up some of the highlights on the sagebrush as well. You can see that low in the foreground, I've mixed more of a darker orange color, and so I'm adding some blades of grass using that color as well. And that's just adding some blades of grass that might appear to be in the shade, just some shadowed grass. But the process is identical to when I first started doing the grass with acrylics in real time. The only difference is I'm using oils, which is just allowing me to, again, get a lot more vibrancy out of the piece. And as I'm bouncing around here, the only thing I'm doing is just adding a few specks of highlights here and there. I'm just taking that same round brush. It's literally the same brush I use with acrylics. And I'm just speckling on some highlights. Just the more pixelation that you can add to things like foliage or the deer fur in the previous video, a lot more realism is going to be brought out in your picture. So I like to pixelate as much as I can in areas where it's appropriate, and that's really the only thing that I'm doing here. And so the final touch at the end here, I've just mixed up some orange and some yellow, and I'm just adding a little bit of color to just a few areas amongst the grass, just to bring out some yellows and oranges in the grass. But that's pretty much it. There's really nothing else to the process. But of course, if you guys had questions, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to try and answer. And of course, here is the finished result. I was very pleased in the end with how it came out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this is a bit different than some of the content I've done in the past, but I thought that I'd keep trying some new things to see how well they do. And I just appreciate you guys watching. Remember that if you'd like to support my channel, please check out my free print giveaway, as well as my eBay auctions and website, and all of those links are in the description below. Thank you guys again so much for watching. We will see you next time.